Hi, in this video we are going to be working on inserting a table into our HTML code. So to start off, we're going to be looking at our Excel document, which contains a table of some menu items for our restaurant here. So I want to turn this Excel document into a table within my design. So I'm going to create a new section for that within my code. So after my location and hours, but before my horizontal rule, so right in here, I'm going to build that table for my menu items. So to do that, I need to start with a table tag. So everything about my table needs to be nested inside this table tag. So right now we don't have anything, and that's because tables are made up of several different parts. So the different parts that make up a table are a table header, table rows, and table data. And you don't always have to have necessarily table headers, but table rows and table data are the key elements within a table in HTML. So let's see what those look like. So let's start out with our headers. So these are going to be our headers here, our dish, our description, and our price. And I get some information from looking at my Excel document, so I can see that these three things are going to be the headers. So I kind of want to make those a little bold in here and make them serve as a header. So, and because I have three of them, I know I need to do 3 table headers. So I'm going to create my table header tags, which is just TH. And because I know I have 3, I may as well just copy paste that 3 times, and then I can bring the text right into those. So I'm going to copy that, do 2 and 3. And now let's go ahead and bring in that information. So I can copy in dish. And then I have description and price. I'm just going to type it, might be a little faster. Description and then price. So those are my table headers. So now that I have my table heads in here, I need to wrap that inside a row because I want this to exist as a solitary row by itself in my table. So I'm going to create a table row, and then I'm going to wrap that around my table head here. So now that that's in a row, so basically what I've created is I have a table, I have a table row, and then I have all my headers. So I'm going to follow that along with creating another table row. And then inside there, because I'm not doing headers again, I'm going to create my table data tags. And that stands for regular data that falls within your table data. So I'm going to go ahead, because I have 3 items of data, so 3 cells of data, I'm going to create, oops, I have jumped too low, I'm going to create 3 table data tags. So TD for table data, I'm going to go ahead and create 3 of those. And now I can copy paste in my information from that spreadsheet. So I'm going to grab the first one. I'm going to grab the description. And I'm going to grab the price. So now you can see that once I put that in, you can see, because these are in different rows, that this row corresponds with this row corresponds with this row corresponds with this. So that is how, or columns, this column corresponds with this one, this underneath, and that there. So that is going to be the format that we're going to do for the remaining data in here. Let's do one more, and then I'm going to speed up our video. So I'm going to create again a table row. Inside that new row, because if I kept going with my table data cells, it'll just keep going across. So I need to force it into a new row. Then I'm going to create table data tags. I need 3 of them because all of my listings have the same amount of data. And now I can go ahead and put in all of my information inside those table datas. And you can see that that has started to fill in. You can see where I've got the second and then that third column in here. So now I'm going to keep going with this and fill out the remaining bits of my menu. So now I have all of my information placed into this table, and you can kind of see how it is lining up within that table structure. So I am going to fix this and put in my special character because that's lighting up red, so AMP semicolon, so I can have that ampersand properly show up. And so now I'm going to put a little bit of a border on this so you can actually see where all the elements are lining up for my table. So I'm going to scroll up into my CSS here, and I'm going to create something that applies to the table head, and the table data. And I'm going to set that to being border 1 pixel solid black. And now you can see that that has put in borders around all of my cells within that table. It might look kind of like a conventional table that you may have seen before. It's a pretty standard border style for a table. It is not that pretty, it is not that exciting, but it is helpful when you're looking at styling a table to see where the HTML is writing and how it is looking at the spacing that is going around your letters. So let's see what else we can do with some of these borders. So oftentimes when designers want to see the borders on their tables, they don't want to see the double border that comes in standard. So they're going to use something called a border collapse property. And to call for that, you just type in your CSS border collapse and set that to being collapse. And now you see that that border has collapsed down, and I only have one line in between all of my elements here, which looks a little nicer and a little less cumbersome for the viewer. You can also add a background color to your table elements. So let's take a look at what that would look like. So if I want to create a new CSS rule, and I'm going to call out the table head and the table data tags, and then I can just set a background color. Let's set it to a light blue there just so you can see the difference, and that adds a background color behind the entire table, which looks pretty cool. There's other background colors that you can do to something. So if you wanted to have it be every other row in your table be colored, you can do that by calling out a slightly different approach here. So let's set that, rather than being the table head and the table data, let's call out the table row. And then I'm going to do a colon nth child. And I'm going to set that to being even. It could be even or odd, basically saying one color, either my even numbers or my odd numbers are going to be colored. And you see how that gives me kind of this every other cell being colored in my table here. So that gives me kind of that stripy table look. That it may be something that you want. So to call that out, you're calling out the table row nth child, and then either even or odd, depending on which ones you want to have colored. If you want to have it where they are vertically colored, to do that, you're going to call out, rather than the table row, you're going to call out the table data and have that be the nth child even. You can also, let's call ours out to be odd, since we have 3 columns, makes a little more sense. And then I can even call out my table header here and call out table header colon nth child. And then I'm going to call out odd. There we go. So that way it's coloring my header too. So that's a way to do a vertical color behind your table cells. So now that I've got a basic table in, I want to style this a little differently. This is kind of boring and fairly not exciting in general design-wise. So I'm going to make some edits to this. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate some of this coloring that I've done, I'm just going to comment it out in the event that I want to, if for whatever reason, bring any of this back or make any edits to it. So I'm going to comment out that CSS. And then I'm going to edit the actual table itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring each menu item to be one table data tag and then have two menu items sit side by side in this table. Just so this is not this real long laundry list, I want to style this up a little bit differently. So I'm going to eliminate this ending table data tag here and then this one in the middle, so this all becomes one table data tag. And I'll eliminate that one there. That's the one I was looking to get rid of. There we go. So this all becomes one table data tag. I'm going to move the price up to being by the dish itself. And now I'm going to repeat this process. So I have one table data tag around each individual item. So now I've made a couple edits to everything. So I have my table data tag wrapping around the entire outline here because we're going to go ahead and style this a little bit differently than I had before, just because tables in and of themselves, while they're useful as dividing elements and things like that, they are not that exciting from a general design standpoint. So we're just going to give this a little more substance and style to it. So I'm also going to wrap two into a row. So now I've got a table row wrapping around two things. There we go. And you can see that now they're going to go side by side because I want to have two menu items sitting side by side as I work through here. So now I've got my my standard, here's the dish, here's the price, and then there's the description. So I'm going to do that in a couple more places. So I'm going to have it sit kind of 2 by 2. And it's very important when you're working with tables to keep track of where things are at. So now that I've got that, I want to eliminate this one because tables can get very funky if you're not keeping track of table rows, table datas. So I've got that row, and now I just want to put that last one into that same row. And there you can see my menu is sitting side by side. I also want to call out above my table, I've commented out those table head tags because I want to have it be something a little more useful. So I'm going to, above my table, I'm going to create an H2 and I'm going to call it lunch menu. So that way I've got a header for this table. So now let's start styling this a little bit. So I'm going to actually call out the description in each of the table data tags, and I'm going to wrap a little paragraph around that. So I'm going to write a P tag, and then I'm going to wrap that around each of these here. So you see how that's going to separate that a little bit because that is a paragraph within. This has the styling of just table data, but I'm going to set this to being something a little bit different. And I'm going to give it a class of, the class is going to be more_info. And the reason I'm using a class instead of an ID is because I want to apply this class to every other information element in my table data. So now that I've got that on one, I'm going to go ahead and scroll up to my CSS, and I'm going to create a class which is just called with a dot and then the class name, so more_info, and I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to set the font size to being 12 pixels, and I can see that that drops that down in size a little bit. I'm going to set the line height to be a little shorter. So I'm going to set it to being 0.5. So that way it gets a little closer. I can even drop it to 0.3. Move that just a little bit closer so it tucks up a little bit nicer. And I'm going to set a bottom border. Border bottom is going to be 1 pixel solid orange. And then I need to set a little bit of padding on the bottom so that pushes away. So I'm going to set padding bottom. Let's look at what 15 pixels looks like. That looks pretty good. And that styled that up really nicely. I can now see that there is hummus. It is $13, and then I get a little description for it. So let's style up the word hummus a little bit, and then the price as well. So I'm going to just put a little B tag around hummus to make it bold. And now that I can see hummus is now $13, I'll put a little dash just to give it a little bit of extra space. There we go. Now I've got $13 for hummus. So I want to follow this pattern to the rest of these. So let's do one more in the video, and then I will speed this up so you can see it in real time. So roasted lamb, $20. Again, I'm going to put that paragraph tag. I'm going to put that class of more info around it, and because I've got that written, it's going to automatically apply the styling. So I just have to wrap that around here, and there it is. So now I can wrap a B tag around roasted lamb chops. Again, I'm using a bold tag as opposed to an emphasis tag because the bold tag is just a stylistic choice. And now you can see that my table is starting to style really nicely. So let's speed this up and apply that to the rest of my table elements. So now you can see that I've applied that styling to everything I have. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So I have a table data in there. I have a bolded menu item here, so the name of the dish. Then I have the price. Underneath I have a little class of more info, which I've set that to be just a little bit of a smaller font with a little horizontal rule here underneath to kind of divide that up. Some of the last styling that I want to do for this is I want to make this table go full width. So by default, it's only going to go as far as, so if I pull this out, it's only going as far as the information that is here. So it's pretty easy to make it go full width. I'm just going to locate the start of my table tag and just type in a style of width equals 100%. And that's going to make that shift across. So now it's going to fill 100% of that browser window, and that feels a lot nicer there. So then the last thing I want to do here is I want to add a little bit of spacing in between that. So a little bit of a gutter in between my two table columns here. So I'm going to scroll up to my CSS here. I'm going to locate, let's turn this back on where I call out the table head and table data. Ooh, that's a really pretty border back there. Let's eliminate that, but you can see it's helpful to see where that table is drawing around my data. So sometimes it's helpful while you're working to turn a border on just to see how it's sizing and how it's placing your elements as opposed to just it being a little bit invisible. But now I'm going to set this to being padding right. Let's do 15 pixels again, and you can see that that just put a little bit of space in between here. So there's going to be a little, so if I added another column, if I wanted to make that a 3-column menu, I could add that on, and I've got a little bit of space in between there, a little gutter. So that looks pretty nice. There is our table lunch menu with everything kind of styled consistently. Looks a lot nicer than your standard default table, but it's important to know how to set up tables in kind of a standard way so that you can break those standards and style appropriately for your design. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next video.